Where does your life truly begin? Not the first breath, not the first memory, but the first moment you listened to something inside you and believed it. Have you ever wondered where that inner voice comes from? The one that sometimes whispers quietly beneath your thoughts, the one that seems older than your age, wiser than your fears, closer to you than your own name. And yet, how often do you ignore it? How often do you feel a subtle knowing rising up in you? A tug, a nudge, a direction. And then, almost immediately, a second voice appears. A voice of doubt, of caution, of comparison. Are you sure? Who do you think you are? What if you're wrong? It's strange, isn't it? How the one voice that feels the most intimate is often the hardest to trust. Tonight, we explore this paradox, this quiet inner tension between what we know and what we're afraid to know, between who we are and who we are told to be. And we'll do it through someone who spent his entire life trying to answer a simple, timeless question. What does it mean to trust yourself? A question Ralph Waldo Emerson lived with, and one he believed could reshape a life from the inside out. Ralph Waldo Emerson, essayist, speaker, quiet rebel. A man who wandered the woods near his home in Concord, not to escape the world, but to listen more deeply to the world within. He wasn't a monk. He wasn't a mystic hiding in caves. He didn't found a religion. But he did something perhaps more radical. He asked people to trust the authority of their own experience over the authority of institutions, traditions, and the expectations of others. Emerson believed that the deepest truths don't arrive from outside, not from books, not from rituals, not from public approval, but from the quiet sense of rightness that rises naturally in each of us when we dare to listen inwardly. He called it self-reliance, but the phrase can be misleading. It sounds like rugged independence or solitary strength. But what he meant was something softer, more intimate, more spiritual. He meant, trust the inner currents of your consciousness. Trust that your intuitions are not random, they are part of the nature of things, the way a seed is part of the forest, before it grows. And so today, we wander with Emerson, into the woods, into the mind, into the quiet place inside you, where truth first begins. Let's begin gently. If you can, take a slow breath. Not deep, not forced, just natural, a settling. Now ask yourself, what is the first small, almost invisible thing you know about yourself that you often ignore? It might be a desire, a boundary, a feeling, a dream so fragile you rarely speak it aloud. That small truth, that is where Emerson begins. He said that every person feels the truth before they understand it. A subtle resonance in the chest, a momentary warmth, a sense of recognition. Something inside says, quietly, yes, this is mine. But then, another part of the mind wakes up and begins its questioning. And the truth collapses under the weight of expectation. Emerson's insight is startlingly simple. Most people never live from the place where their life actually arises. They live from habit, from imitation, from fear, from the stored opinions of others. And because of this, their deepest knowing remains unused, like a book they never open. So let's try something. Think of a moment when you sensed something deeply, a direction, a feeling, a decision, and it felt right, before you had reasons. Not emotional impulse, not desire, but a quiet clarity, a calm knowing. Where did that come from? What is it that knows, before thought, and beneath fear? When Emerson asks us to trust ourselves, he is not talking about ego, or confidence, or stubbornness. He is talking about listening for that place of prior knowing. The part of you that feels like the center of a compass needle. Sometimes it points towards something difficult. Sometimes it pulls you away from what others expect. Sometimes it reveals a desire that feels too large to admit. But the point is not the direction. The point is noticing you have a compass at all. Most people live as if they don't. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a forest. There is a path, clear, direct, well-trodden. Everyone you know seems to be walking on it. They wave to you, encourage you, tell you it's the sensible way. But to your left, almost hidden by branches, there is a faint trail, barely there. Just a thinning of the grass, as if someone long ago walked that way once. And as you look at it, something in you stirs. A slight pull. A quiet interest. A recognition you can't explain. That is your inner self. Not the loud part. Not the part that argues or demands. But the part that simply knows. Emerson's life was about choosing that hidden trail, over and over again, even when no one else understood the choice. He walked it because he felt that honoring that subtle pull was more true than following the well-paved path toward acceptance. And this is where the insight deepens. Trusting yourself isn't about being right, it's about being whole. Interestingly, modern neuroscience has something to say here. Researchers studying intuition have found that the brain makes thousands of micro-evaluations before we are consciously aware of them. Tiny signals, changes in heartbeat, patterns in neural networks, sensations in the gut, all point toward a direction, long before thought catches up. Your consciousness is not a spotlight, shining on a blank stage. It is an ocean. Deep currents move beneath the surface, before the waves appear. So when you just know something, it is not magic. It is not wishful thinking. It is the front edge of a vast, ancient intelligence you carry within you. The problem is not knowing. The problem is trusting the knowing. Emerson sensed this long before neuroscience did. He believed that each person is connected to something universal, a kind of inner nature that echoes the nature of the world. In Eastern traditions, this is not surprising. In Taoism, it is called the Way. In Buddhism, it is awakened mind. In Hindu philosophy, it is the quiet presence of Atman. A deep knowing that is not personal, yet moves through the person. Emerson, living in New England 2 centuries ago, felt the same truth emerging in him, and he called it simply the inner light. When we place Emerson beside Eastern wisdom, a beautiful picture emerges. In the Tao Te Ching, there is a line that says, "Knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom." This, knowing yourself, is not about personality or identity or preference. It is about tuning the mind to its own quiet center. Letting your life be guided, not by comparison, but by an inner alignment. Emerson's self-trust was not self-centeredness. It was self-listening, a discipline, a practice, a way of being in the world, without abandoning the truth within. And if you look at mindfulness traditions, Zen, Vipassana, Yoga, you find the same emphasis. Before you act, before you speak, before you choose, return to the still point. Feel the inner movement. Sense what is true. Not what is comfortable. Not what avoids conflict. Not what pleases others, but what feels deeply, quietly right. This is not easy. It requires honesty, patience, a willingness to face yourself. No wonder Emerson said that trusting oneself was the rarest of human achievements. So let's come back to you, to your breath, to your life. Where in your life do you already know something you're afraid to trust? Maybe it's a direction you feel pulled toward, a work, a calling, a quiet desire. You can almost articulate, but haven't fully admitted. Maybe it's a truth about a relationship, something that no longer fits, or something that wants to grow, but you're afraid of the consequences. Maybe it's a boundary you feel in your body, but override with politeness. Maybe it's simply the recognition that you are living in a way that doesn't quite match your inner nature, and you can feel the friction in your chest, in your stomach, in the way you fall asleep at night. Trusting yourself does not always mean changing your life. Sometimes it means changing the way you inhabit your life. It might begin with a single honest moment. This is what I feel. This is what I need. This is what I know is true for me. Not forever. Not as an identity. Just right now. Because self-trust is not absolute. It's relational. Moment to moment. Breath to breath. And here's something important. Trusting yourself doesn't mean you're always right. It means you're willing to live in alignment with your own awareness and let the path unfold from there. People often think self-trust means certainty, but Emerson believed the opposite. Self-trust means walking without certainty, but with sincerity. Walking with a willingness to be guided from within. If you'd like, you can try a small exercise. Think of a question you're living with right now. Something open. Something uncertain. Something that tugs at you. Hold it softly in your mind, like a pebble in your palm. Now, instead of thinking about it, simply notice the feeling in your body. As you imagine saying yes to one possible direction. Then notice the feeling as you imagine saying no. Not the arguments. Not the fears. just the felt sense. Often, the body reveals the truth before the mind accepts it. Emerson would say, "This feeling, this quiet resonance, is where your life is trying to speak. Not with words, with alignment." When you trust yourself, something changes in the architecture of your being. You become less reactive, less dependent on approval, less trapped in comparison. You begin to live from the inside out, instead of the outside in. And strangely, the world feels less threatening, because you no longer look to it to tell you who you are. You listen inwardly, and let that inward listening shape the outward choices. This is not ego. This is not self-protection. This is self-rootedness. A grounded way of being. A way of moving through the world with quiet clarity. A way of living where you are not constantly abandoning yourself for the comfort of others. Self-trust is not selfishness. Self-trust is responsibility. Responsibility to the truth that lives within you, before it is shaped by anything outside you. And there is something beautiful about this. When you trust yourself, you become more capable of loving others honestly, because you're not loving for validation, or for safety, or for identity. You're loving from fullness, not from lack. As we come to the end of this reflection, pause with me. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breath come naturally. Let the mind rest, just a little. And ask yourself, quietly, what is one small truth in me that I am ready to trust? Not act on, not declare, not defend. Just trust. Feel it. Let it expand slightly, like a candle glowing softly in a dark room. This is the beginning of self-reliance. Not the loud kind, not the heroic kind. The gentle kind, the kind that grows slowly from the center of your being, outward into your life. Emerson believed that each person carries a unique note, a tone, a frequency that only they can express. Trusting yourself is the art of letting that note be heard, even softly, even imperfectly, even just by you. So before we go, let one question linger, not to answer, but to live with. What would your life become if you trusted the quiet knowing within you just a little more each day? Let the question open. Let it dissolve gently. Let it echo in the silence that follows. Thank you for listening, for being here, for exploring this quiet truth with me. This has been What We Are, a space for reflection, awareness, and the inner nature of reality. Until next time, trust gently.